and I learned that I can make the impossible a reality. And even things that I couldn't fathom at the time became a reality because I was so committed and so on my path and so behind what was passionate. And so I think when you have that kind of drive, there's no failure. I mean, here's the great thing. People that are afraid of failure, I have some great news for anybody that's scared of failure. There's no such thing, because you cannot fail if you will not quit. You cannot beat somebody that won't quit.
Wow. You cannot fail if you will not quit. Again, these are powerful, powerful notions. And I repeat them because we all need to hear them. We need to hear them more than once. We need to be able to tell it to ourselves and sometimes have somebody else tell it to us. So tell us about your work and how do you, what kind of clients are you interested in? How do you help people? What can you do for our listeners?
Thanks. We usually work with small to middle market companies. We're going to work with the business owner or somebody pretty high up in the executive teams there. And our job is to go into that organization and set the conditions so that they can do what they want to do a lot faster. An example of what I'm talking about that everybody knows that is long before my time, but in 1943, the War Department contacted Lockheed Corporation and said, "We need you to build a jet fighter," which, by the way, Lockheed didn't know how to do. Nobody knew how to do it at the time. They said, "We need you to build this plane to save the world, basically. We're not going to give you any money to do it. We don't really have any physical space for you to do it. And if you actually figure out how to do it, great, we need you to do it in 180 days. Well, Lockheed delivered the XP-80 Shooting Star 37 days ahead of schedule, because they were able to set the conditions. They developed what later became known as the Skunk Works. And this is kind of an ideal scenario in terms of how to set up an organization that's rich in flow. And so we work with tech companies, usually sub 25 mil. We do also work with one-on-one with executives. They're going to be at middle market companies or sometimes large companies. They might be running a division within an organization, and we'll work with them one-on-one to, get them wherever they want to go faster than they thought they could get there.
Well, I mean, geez, wouldn't that be great, right? And I'm talking to all of us. And what is it that you talked about it in our previous show about working with teams, and how does this reverberate out? Because we want teams to get into flow. We want the individuals that report to us to get into flow too, right? So how does that work?
Well, we'll typically work with small teams. We normally don't work with many more. I just say probably 12 is about our maximum. Now, they might have people underneath them, but it's getting them to understand what this is and how it works. And the tough part is the behavior modification. An example of what I'm talking about in terms of behavior modification, a lot of executives, a lot of people will work more hours so they can get more done. Working more hours to get more done is akin to using your credit card to buy more stuff, right? You're overextended.
Is that wrong?
Proposition, right? That's still right. That's the hamster wheel, though, right?
Right. No kidding.
And so here's what happens. Like I'll take an executive that's working 50 hours a week. We will cut them back to about 36 hours a week. They'll end up getting 3 times as much done, because there's no more time for distraction. There's no more time for the stuff that doesn't actually make an impact. Right? Because we don't look through the lens of efficiency or productivity. We look through the lens of leverage, right? How can I make this one meeting delete 3 more meetings this week? I bet I can do it. Meetings is a great place in any organization to start looking for leverage. How can, in this meeting, can I make sure I don't get 20 more emails on the back end that I got to deal with? How can I solve as many, answer as many questions with one rule? Like I have a rule when I go to if I go to some event in a hotel ballroom, the rule is I find the first seat on the aisle, on the left-hand aisle. That's the first seat aisle on the left, because now I don't have to think about where I'm going to sit. I just walk in and go to it.
Well, and I've heard people talk about, Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs' wardrobe choices, Jeff Bezos, another one, right? I mean, not that they couldn't afford to buy plenty of clothes. They never spent any time thinking about what am I going to wear today? And I imagine it was never going to be what am I going to eat today as well. So are those some of the techniques that you also use to be able to make the, let's say, create the landscape for flow?
Yeah, absolutely. Removing the unnecessary decisions, we'll do that. We actually leverage people, their own biorhythms, their what we call their circadian rhythms. For example, if you want me to come up with some, something that requires my big brain, you better hit me between 6 and 10 in the morning because I'm a morning person. Now, if you want me to be like creative, right, that's really new and innovative, you want to catch me between about 11 and 1 because my brain waves are actually different than they are when I'm in that high brain thinking mode. So it's about knowing when that is and what am I going to do in these different times of the day so that I can do them better. Like if I need to do a creative brainstorming session, I don't want to do that at 9 in the morning because that's not when my creativity is at its best. So if I can structure my day around these things, there's the things that we love to do and the things we don't love to do. Well, don't do the things that you don't love to do at the time that you don't want to do them, right? Like if I know that my energy is lower in the afternoon, which it is, then that's not when I want to run my payroll, because I don't like doing my payroll. I don't even do it anymore. I have other people do it. But but the point being is that like accounting, bookkeeping, that's just not my thing. So I don't want to do that when I'm already at a lull because it's going to drag me down and I'm just going to feel terrible when I do it. So do that maybe in the morning for me when I got my bigger brains on,
So when do we get to check our emails and clear off the half of it, which is junk, or figure out what needs to be attended to and how it affects our day? When does that make sense to do?
It depends. I mean, not at the risk of sounding like a lawyer, it depends, right? I have people that it's about being. It's remember that your email inbox is nothing more than a chaotic filing system for what everybody else wants you to do. So it's about managing expectations and not getting back to people instantaneously necessarily. So if we can be focused and intentional, now that might look like I have an executive that checks his email 6 times a day and only 6 times a day. He can check it whenever he wants. And this is his rule. He says, I can check it whenever I want. But if I've checked it, 4 times by 11 a.m., I only have 2 more times. So he's going to be very focused about when he does that. Other people do what we call time blocking. I'm going to check my email between 8 and 8:30, between 11 and 11:30, between 2 to 2:30, between 4:30 to 5. That's my email time, and that's all I do in that time. So it really depends on the individual and what their work is like. But it's ultimately it's about being intentional instead of being reactive.
Wow, that sounds powerful. And it also, I think about it, I feel like it might be difficult for me, right? Because I'm like a Pavlov dog, right? I get a notification and it's impossible to not want to check it, especially if I'm in between, flow activities. God forbid I actually get into flow on a regular basis. So, it's that, is it a retraining process? How do I make those decisions and make them stick?
It is a retraining process because we're all cocaine addicts. You have a chemical in the brain called dopamine, hits the pleasure center. Dopamine's a pleasure chemical. What it does is it makes you focus on something, right? And the thing that you really like. Dopamine feels so good that when they trained lab rats to press a button or a lever in their cage, and that would give them a hit of dopamine. They pressed it so often that they actually forgot to eat and they started to starve to death. Like that's how good it feels. And it is. If there's a street version of dopamine, it's cocaine. So every time your phone goes off or you get that notification that you got a like or an email or whatever, the reason we have to check it is because we're getting a dopamine hit. We're getting our fix. And so we need to wean ourselves off of that. So turn off the notifications on the phone. Don't react when you look at the phone. Even if you're looking, I just need to see what time it is, and you see those notifications, you get sucked in and you lose 20 minutes, right? So it really is turn off those notifications, go to your email, check your messages, check your text when it's right for you, because then you're going to get it as opposed to being pulled to it.
Well, that is so powerful. And Chris, you have given us so much to think about. I myself have taken pages of notes because it's not enough to just be able to listen to it. I got to hear it again and again, and I got to be reminding myself. So thank you so much for these incredible tools, this incredible wisdom. And the possibility that you've opened up for us to be able to do this for ourselves. I am so inspired. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I love this work and I love sharing it. And I love what happens in organizations and for individuals. It's truly, as much as I dislike the word, transformative. And thank you.
Well, everybody, you can have a chance too to reach out to Chris M. King, ChristopherMKing.com. And, just go after this, get it for yourselves. Thank you all so much.